Creative babble.
Timberland Pro knows that NASCAR starts long before the green flag waves. Because behind every race are the doers, the people who show up to the track early and stay long after the race ends. And that's who Timberland Pro is built for. Durable, comfortable, and professional, these boots perform as hard as you do, on the job and off it. Real work, real people, real craft. Visit TimberlandPro.com and discover products that help workers perform at their best.
I know we just started the Gypsy Rose series, and I promise we're going to get back to it. A new episode is going to drop on Tuesday, but there's been major breaking news on the Stalker case, and I just can't wait. If you're new to Pretend and you haven't heard the Stalker series, stop right here, go listen to season 12 of Pretend. Coincidentally, it's a Munchausen by proxy story with some similar threads to the Gypsy case. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you press pause. Okay, now that we've cleared the room, 3 weeks ago, at 6:30 in the morning, Peoria police surrounded Tanya and Rick Fernandez's house. They had a search warrant. Officers pulled the Fernandezes out of the house, told the neighbors to stay inside, and spent the next several hours going through every room and every device. I have the search warrant right in front of me right now. It names the Fernandezes by name, all of them. They took the phones, the computers, the hard drives, the tablets, the cameras, even the game consoles. And then they left, and nobody was arrested. Which is when the rumors started, because at first people were telling me that the whole family had been hauled away in handcuffs, and that wasn't true. And then I had multiple people tell me that Rick was in custody. That wasn't true either. And for 3 weeks, I couldn't confirm a single thing because there was nothing to confirm. No bookings, no charges, nada. Then, last night, the other shoe dropped. One of the Fernandezes was arrested and booked in Maricopa County Jail on roughly 30 counts. 10 of them are felonies. And after 4 years of this family telling me that Dr. Gresman and her husband were tormenting them, after years of investigating and countless podcast episodes, police say that the person doing it was living in that house the whole time. And today, we know who they arrested. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else. Can you believe it? Summer's almost over, and now we have to get ready for fall. And August is the best time to start planning your new wardrobe. You guys already know I'm a big fan of Quince. I just love Quince because it's really made out of great material. It looks like it's going to last forever, and it's the clothes that I wear almost every single day. They have ultra soft organic cotton tees, premium Mongolian cashmere sweaters. So take a look at your closet. If things are starting to look a little worn out, Quince is a great place to make an upgrade. They have premium denim, chinos, from just $60. Everything I've received so far fits perfectly, it looks good, and the best part is that Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They're good guys too. They work with ethical factories, they cut out the middleman. I know that my best find at Quince was their Protect golf pants. I wear those things everywhere. I could wear them with a nice shirt, but I could also wear it with a t-shirt. So upgrade your everyday. Go to quince.com/pretendpod for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada and the UK too. That's QUINCE.com/pretendpod for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/pretendpod. So I'm deep in the Gypsy series, head down, buried in medical records, and I'm not thinking about anything other than Gypsy. And then a source of mine sends me a message on Instagram. It's a mugshot of one of the Fernandezes. Now, my first thought is it's Tanya, obviously, right? Or maybe Rick, because that's where this whole thing has been pointing for years. But it is neither of them. It's one of the kids. It's Shelby, who you know from the show as Chelsea. And if you've been with me since season 12, you already know that Shelby is the disabled daughter. She's Dr. Gresman's patient. She's the reason why these two families ever crossed paths in the first place. She is the entire reason I spent 23 episodes of this podcast trying to solve this mystery. And now the state of Arizona is saying that Shelby is the stalker. Shelbey Danielle Fernandez, booked August 11th, arrested by Peoria Police Department, had her bond set at $5,000. And then I scrolled down to the charges. Let me tell you, when I saw this, I couldn't sleep. In fact, I stayed up till 4 a.m. working on this. I went back through the hours and hours of tapes recorded with Tanya and Rick to see if now, in hindsight, if things would make sense. Back then, my opinion on who the stalker was changed on a daily basis. Most days, I thought it was Tanya. Some days, I thought it was the oldest daughter. And then I thought it was the oldest son with a criminal record. And occasionally, I thought it was Caleb, the disabled son, or Shelby, the one at the center of this whole thing. But every single time I landed on Shelby, I talked myself right back out of it because everybody around her told me the same thing, that she can't. She doesn't have the capacity. She doesn't have the skills. She can barely manage her own day. So I went back and I started listening to some of the recordings I captured the last 4 years. Here's Tanya and Rick.
This all started with her husband when Shelby was frustrated and cried in the clinic when we took her. And the stalker mentioned that in his text. He said, well, you made your daughter cry in clinic.
He even said it. I'm frustrated. I hate this.
Yep.
I don't, and I'm like, it's going to be okay, Shelby. It's going to be okay. We're both trying to calm her down. But we were not the ones making her cry. And she was frustrated.
After we discovered that the messages were coming from inside the house, my number one suspect was Tanya, because she had the clearest motive. This doctor pissed her off, and now she wants revenge.
I'm going after the jugular with this one because it's not fair. And she owes me an apology. She owes Shelby an apology. She really does. She devastated that kid.
But now, after all this happened, it's clear that the stalker knew information that only Shelby and her parents could know.
Shelby was crying because of the stoma issues. During that 6-hour standout, the texter said, my wife was pissed because your daughter was crying in clinic. And nobody knew that except for the doctor, the scribe, Shelby, and me and Tanya.
And what complicates this even more is that Shelby is an adult, 30 years old, but the state of Arizona decided that she can't make her own decisions. She can't even vote. And now that state is charging her as an adult with felonies. You have guardianship over both of these children,
Yes.
right? Your children.
Yes, we do.
Looking back, it's clear police always were weary of Shelby, but they never formally charged her. We were told that she had the intelligence of a child. How could she possibly pull this off? One night, police were at the house taking a report, and while they were standing there in the living room, messages started to come in from the stalker on Tanya's phone, right in front of everyone. Here's Tanya.
They were right there watching those messages come through on my phone and then encouraging me to interact with him, which I did. And Shelby was up because she was afraid to go in her room by herself. So she was sitting in the other room, like I could see her, and playing on her tablet.
This is a clip of Tanya talking with the police.
She's also the person that Detective Benin interviewed, and they accused her, they blamed her, and she came out hysterical. crying. She has mental problems, okay? She has nothing to do with this. She was hospitalized on 2 separate occasions while this crap was going on, and she did not have any access to her phone, her tablet, nothing.
We'd love to find that person that's doing it just as much as you guys would, and we'd fully charge them with it.
Right. Well,
so that's where we're at, unfortunately. We can't. The only information we have, unfortunately, it says it's coming from the Fernandez house.
Which blows my mind. It just blows my mind.
Right. And I can understand your frustration. You're saying, it's not you guys are involved, and it's got to be frustrating for you to know that it's not you and to have everything come back saying it's from your house.
Because, the night of the surveillance, Shelby never left the living room. She never went and hid. She was terrified. She stayed within range of everybody.
Here's another call with Detective Anthony Hardina about a time Shelby ran away, which at the time made me think that maybe she's not as developmentally behind as we were meant to believe.
Yeah, one of your daughters ran away from home, right?
No, nobody.
Snuck out?
One of them ran away?
Yeah, there's a report of...
Oh, Shelby went down to the park, like 5 houses down from our old house, and came back.
To meet someone, right?
Yeah, and scared herself and came back.
Did you know that there was stuff on your phone, your daughter's phone, that the postal inspector found? I don't know if you guys are aware of it.
No.
Like apps and stuff that she's talking to other people. Did you know that?
She had told me that, but she said that they were old and she used them maybe once or twice.
Oh, he said they were pretty recently deleted.
Oh.
I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
Shelby's not capable of doing this.
My Stalker series ended without a clear suspect. Tanya and Rick were indicted with 6 felonies, but we never really did get definitive proof of who was pressing send on those threatening messages. Until now. When we come back from the break, we're going to hear from someone who had regular access to Shelby. And for the first time ever, you will hear from Shelby herself.
Hey, Javier.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. I am currently at the dog park, so I hope it's not too noisy or windy.
Well,
a little bit of time.
This is what happens during breaking news. It never happens when we want it, right?
I know. But
Sienna messaged me a screenshot of Shelby's mugshot. That's how I found out. I was speechless. I immediately called her and started recording.
But I'm so glad that I'm able to finally talk to you. This is actually pretty cool.
Well, this has been the case with this story where I've had to, have a lot of patience and wait for things to happen, right? Because, it took me 2 years to do the original series, and it was a lot of hurry up and wait. Wow.
So how long have you altogether been covering this story?
Oh my God,
with
I don't even know. Let's see, it's 2026.
This first started in 2017 when the whole, when they first got the encounters.
Oh my God, you're not going to believe this. January of 2022 was my first.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay, so it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so much has been happening. Where to start? Where would you like to start?
Start at the beginning, because I knew neighbors had told me that there was a raid at their house. And at first it sounded like there was an arrest made, but later it came to be that it was just a raid, that they were searching their house. Because I heard that there were some swatting incidents with the neighbors, but that's all I heard. And I put out a request for information and I have gotten nothing back. So I know nothing.
So you heard about the raid on the Fernandez's home or the neighbor's home?
Well, I don't know. Tell me, just start from the beginning.
So apparently this all happened on one day, as Shelby told me. And it's hard now to find her as a reliable source for things that she has now told me. But I guess last month, It was during the 4th of July is when the stalker swatted her neighbor's home, an elder from a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall, and I believe it was Tanya's brother and his wife's home in the middle of the night, with threats that he was going to harm her, and then the Kingdom Hall threats, of course, that there was going to be a shooting at Tanya's Kingdom Hall that they all went to. And this kind of all happened around the same time, just this last month.
And you only know about this because Shelby has been telling you about this.
Shelby has been reporting this to me, and I felt like maybe she was my little undercover, me thinking, okay, well, Tanya is obviously the one all behind this, because no one's really going to look at Shelby, given her medical history, her mental capacity, which, talking to Shelby, it's kind of hard to say really what's true and what's not about what her mom has to say, how Shelby is, that she has the mentality of a 12-year-old, I believe, that she said. It's not really true, but I just, well, maybe it still is Tanya. Yeah, so she's been kind of giving me all this info about the stalker and what he's doing, what he's up to, what her mother has told Shelby what he's doing, and yeah.
Remind me how you're related to the family.
So I kind of got into the family through Blake Fernandez, which is the oldest son of Tanya and Rick. We were together for about almost 3 years, 2.5 years. And I don't know if you've been keeping up with.
Yeah,
I know
he's back in jail, isn't he?
He's back in jail, unfortunately, for exploitative charges against children.
Blake Fernandez is Rick and Tanya's oldest son, and he's a registered sex offender in Arizona. Back in 2014, he was convicted of attempted kidnapping and child abuse. The victim was 14 years old. He was 20. His adult probation officer confirmed that he will be on probation for that offense until the year 2095. And guess what? He's back in jail now because a grand jury indicted him on 2 new counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. He goes on trial September 3rd, which means that right now, 2 of Rick and Tanya's kids are sitting in the same Maricopa County jail for 2 different things.
Which I had to find out through a police report that my mother had obtained. And she told me, she's like, you got to see this, because I had no idea my apartment that we both shared was raided by, with a search warrant for, because of what he's been doing for the last couple of years,
you lived
I guess.
With him?
I did. I lived with him for about, 2 years.
Wow. And when you were with him, I mean, sorry that we're taking a little sidetrack, but I am curious about that too. When you were with him, did you know about the original sex offender charges?
I did. That was actually basically the first thing he told me when we met, because, of course, SOs do have obligations to tell people, of course, of their history. So he was very upfront. As far as what exactly happened back in 2015, the incident with that minor, was not completely honest, because I did find the police report of that incident, and it was not good. As far as what the girl testified happening, he was kind of on the right path of what he did, but he just wasn't fully honest.
Right, because people always
completely lying, but
yeah, people always try to make themselves out to be
like the better person, which I felt like, okay, well, maybe he took accountability and he's trying to learn from his mistakes, but people can live very secretive lives. Of course, after being with him for a little while, I've noticed some true colors, the true side of him, unfortunately. And so it did take him being arrested to us to finally go our separate ways, because I was, of course, not going to support that.
So wait, him being arrested the second time is what did the relationship end?
Yeah, so I knew we were kind of childhood friends. We grew up in the Jehovah's Witness religion, so of course we kind of were in passing, and I knew of him. but I never really had a conversation with him, not up until a couple of years ago. And then in that time in my life too, with the religion, I mean, I don't know how much you know about it, but it is a pretty high controlled cult organization. So I was just trying to get away from it, and my mother, and because I was living with her at the time. And so I guess I looked at Blake like he was my escape. And he felt the same way about his mother, which is not true, because I really feel like he is a humongous mama's boy, and he will forever be tethered to his mother.
But
especially now.
But he would complain to you about her?
Oh yeah. But now it's, oh Mom, I need you and I love you, and oh, I want to be back in the truth, because we both left. We were exonerated, disfellowshipped. So it's like you're cut off from the organization. And so, and he was very passionate about how he felt about it. I was too. We were on the same page. And now, of course, with his mom still being a witness, he is now trying to show his devotion again to God, which wasn't there before. But of course, now he needs all the help he could get.
Wow. So you mentioned the second incident, the second arrest. When did that happen?
Yeah. Second arrest happened April. Oh, wow. I have to look at my calendar. I want to say 22nd.
I mean, I can look it up
April.
too. But it happened this year, right?
Yes. It was about almost 6 months ago.
What was all that about? Like, do you know the details?
Not exact details. I mean, when the detective came to our apartment and I was just, what's going on? And he was being taken into, the custody van, and he just gave me the search warrant, and the charge was at the bottom. It was just an exploitation charge of minor. And I'm like, I don't know. That could be anything.
But this was while you two were together?
This was while we were together, yeah. Yeah.
And do you know who this person is? Is it like somebody that's close to age or somebody much younger?
It was not good material, child porn material. So it was, it was someone I believe under of 8 years old.
So he was looking at porn. It wasn't like he was in a physical relationship with a minor.
No, it was online.
I got
you. It's an online CP charge. I guess that, and I believe he has about 6 counts. So there's been different instances where he has, I don't know, whatever he was doing, but it's been, I don't know if they've been kind of tracking him for the last 2 years, but the original charge goes back to, I believe, 2024.
Wow.
And I guess they've just been trying to get as much evidence so they can, go ahead and indict him, which a grand jury already did that. So he's kind of already done.
It's just amazing. I told you I started this in what was it, 2022 or whatever, and I don't know that family other than from my reporting, but it seemed like Jehovah's Witness, salt of the earth, and now look at them, like 2 of their kids are in jail.
That's
and
wild. Both of them have the same charge, but Shelby has a plethora of, I don't know if from the screenshot I showed you.
So
arm's length.
All right, let's talk about that. Okay, so you kind of gave me your history of how you're connected to the family, which is good because it answered some of my questions about Blake. But here's what I don't understand. It's like, why would Shelby be calling you and talking to you? Were they calls or were they text messages?
They were all through text and voice message, through SMS and Instagram mostly. And then when they were raided, she had to get a burner phone or a prepaid phone to continue to be in communication with me. And then, I actually messaged her today and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And, nothing,
wow.
I guess.
Okay. So you're dating Blake, but you formed this relationship with Shelby. When did that start? Like, when did she start confiding in you?
It actually didn't happen until after Blake was arrested. I haven't really ever had any type of relationship with Shelby since she has kind of been bound in that house. and doesn't really have any friends. I guess, I would try to reach out to her, but, me being so involved with Blake and our life and how chaotic that really was, it wasn't until after he was arrested that I reached out. And I was just like, are you guys okay? Like, are you okay? Because the other siblings have blocked me because of religious reasons. I guess their mother has gotten to them that they should not be communicating with me because I am a bad person, I guess. So the only person I got in contact was Shelby. And she was very forthcoming about everything. And I was like, wow, okay, wow, so much information. And then that just, for the last couple of months, that she's just been telling me things with the stalker, things with Blake, and with her mom, and just kind of keeping me in the loop of what's going on in that family. What's going on behind the closed doors that no one can see.
But when she talks to you about the stalker, she's not telling you like, I'm the stalker. She's playing along with this whole thing, right?
She's playing along with, the stalker told my mom, and that's how they always address him, the stalker, which is weird. I just thought it was always so interesting when they would say the stalker. Like, what is this? Sounds like some kind of movie. Yeah. So she would never say me, of course. But yeah, it's just.
Did you
crazy.
suspect that it could have been her?
Honestly, when I was listening to your podcast, there was a lot of like, maybe it is Shelby. And then going through the comments of what everyone was thinking as well, I'm like, I don't know. I really think it's Tanya. Could Shelby really would she be able to do any of these things? But again, I don't know Shelby. I don't really know her. So I can't really say that she couldn't be capable of this or that.
That's true. I mean, you met her in real life, right?
Yes, a couple of times.
But you know her enough to know whether she's intelligent enough to pull something off like this? Because that's a big question, right? Like, she has a severe mental disability. At least that's what we think, right? Because
that's what we think. That's what Tanya has said. But I don't know. I haven't heard from her doctors or anyone to actually back this up that her mentality is of a child. Because I've talked to her, and there's some in her grammar that might be a little off, but other than that, she completely understands what she's saying, and there's comprehension. So I'm like, I don't know. And so my mind kind of went back to, could it be her?
And you mentioned that you were corresponding with her. Did you say that there were also voice memos too?
Yeah, so through Instagram, like how I sent you the voice message, it's just the easier way for us to kind of talk. And so she would send them to me too.
So it was definitely her, right? Because like one thought,
it was her. Yeah.
Yeah, one thought that crossed my mind was, could this be Tanya?
Could it be Tanya?
Right.
Oh, most definitely. I thought that, and that's why I'm like sending voice messages and trying to get pictures and stuff like that, so I can prove that I'm talking to her. Because
can you send me some of that stuff?
Yeah, I could. There's a lot, so I may have to go through them.
Please. Oh my God, you're blowing my freaking mind. I'm going to play you some of these messages. So while all of this is going on, Shelby is recording voice memos and sending them to Sienna. She has no idea I have these voice memos. She's just talking to somebody that she trusts about what's happening inside the house. And she's doing it in real time, days after the police tore their place apart.
We got another pizza order. This is our second order that we got. And my mom is sending it to the detective, and my parents are talking, and my mom was like, I kind of hope he messes with us, But like, why are you hoping that he messes with you? Because in the past, when he used to mess with us, she would get really annoyed, Also, shockingly, we got another unpaid pizza delivery like 10 minutes ago.
If you listen to season 12, you know exactly what this is. The unpaid pizza deliveries that were one of the very first things that this family told me about 4 years ago. Somebody ordered food to the house, doesn't pay, and the driver shows up expecting money. It happened over and over again. And now it's still happening, even after the raid. Even after Tanya and Rick were indicted. after police took every device in that house. The other thing in that clip is Tanya. Her daughter catches her saying she kind of hopes he messes with them. And Shelby says it out loud that that's not how her mom used to react. It used to make her angry. Now she's hoping for it. Then in this next clip, Shelby picks up the search warrant, the actual paper that the detectives left at her house.
To make things easier, I could just show you the papers that the detective brought because there's a lot of information on the paper.
And she starts going through it on camera for Sienna, page by page.
My camera sucks, so I'm gonna have to do it like this, but this is just a search warrant that we got, and I'll zoom in a little and let you read it. But those are the charges that they found with our IP address.
And then she goes down the list, and I'm not going to read you the names because every person on that page is somebody that police believes was targeted. And it wasn't just the doctor and her husband. There were 9 separate entities on that list, and they've been through enough without me putting them in a podcast. But I'll tell you who they are to her. 2 of them are her grandparents. One family lives down the street and goes to the same Kingdom Hall. Another is a next door neighbor. Another is an elder at the congregation. Another is a woman and her friend. Every single one of them, according to Shelby, has been swatted. There's one more thing on these tapes that I want you to hear. She's talking about how fast the family got some of their property back from the police. And she compares her family's situation to her brother's case.
I mean, I'm not saying that what Blake did was, not serious, but this is more serious because, it's a religious crime. It's like a terrorist threat, plus child porn. So, it's kind of crazy how we're getting it back just 2 weeks later, Go back to bed. So I do believe you about, the whole stalking and your thoughts about who's doing it, but I hope that when you messaged the detective about your device, I hope that you didn't really bring up your thoughts about the whole stalking thing, considering that she's the same detective that's working on our case. The rating really gave me really horrible PTSD. I had a gun pointed at me when I woke up. I'm not the same because of that. I'm not the same. And I know that, if you were to tell her, I feel like a can of worms is going to be open. And honestly, I'm not trying to protect my parents, but I'm just trying to protect my mental health. And they're going to find out eventually.
You don't understand. I've been working on this story for so long, and it just ended, and it didn't have any conclusion. And look, everyone is innocent until proven guilty,
until
right?
proven guilty, yeah.
But look at those charges, okay? So we got...
Look at the charges, I know.
So here, I'm going to read it to you just so we could go through it. We got unlawful lewd electronic communication. Multiple counts of that, which is a misdemeanor. Yeah. But honestly, that is obvious what that is. It's all these text messages, all this harassment, right? We got threatening, intimidating electronic communication, which just sounds like the same thing. There's multiple counts there, but a completely different charge. We got sexual exploitation of a minor. Okay, this is a felony too, and that is... From at first glance, remember, I have not even I just got this, but this looks like the most serious charge of them all. And so then we're thinking sexual exploitation of a minor. And then, and I'm thinking, well, that has to be related to the stalking because I mean, a lot of my listeners didn't get to see the text messages, but they were really nasty and nasty towards the doctor's baby. You know what I mean?
That part, and I've never seen them, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I would want to. And just also, I thought it was very eerie the way that Tanya would say these things on your podcast.
Uh-huh.
Like, why did she actually have to speak of these text messages? They're so vile. You know, how could you even come to read that? But now that makes me think of it in Shelby. It's like, she was writing these things? She was texting
Yeah. Yeah. I think
messages?
that literally the jury's still out, right? Whether Tanya was
Yeah,
responsible or not. But guess what? Tanya is not sitting in jail right now. Shelby is. So
right,
that means
right,
when they raided that house, they found enough evidence to point to Shelby. Okay.
right.
And if they're wrong, like if these investigators are wrong, then the whole case goes out the window, right? Because they have
Right,
to go in there with the goods. Otherwise, they don't have a case. But look, I'm only halfway
exactly.
through listing the charges, right? I'm not even halfway through.
Not even
I'm just on the third charge, right? And so
yeah,
then you got false emergency reports, which that makes sense. Those are multiple felony 6 counts.
yeah.
Multiple. Now, let's see. So felony 6, by the way I understand it, is like it's kind of counterintuitive. The higher the felony, the lesser the
The
seriousness, right?
sentencing
So like
or
the
the
fact that
serious,
the
yeah.
sexual exploitation of a minor is a felony 2, that's actually more serious than a felony 6, right?
Well,
So
yeah. In the state of Arizona, they don't mess around with child, sex crimes,
yeah,
unfortunately.
but a
So it's
felony
the
is a
mandatory
felony. I
sentence.
mean,
Right.
yeah. And then you got stalking. That one's an obvious one. Then you got
Yeah.
fraudulent use of a credit card. That's a misdemeanor. I'm
Yes.
not quite sure
Yes.
what that has. Maybe that's pizza related. I don't know.
So I'm thinking that, or when I was with Blake, I remember we were on our way to a baseball game, and he checked his phone, and at the time that's, when the stalker was really, I guess, at it or whatever, that he had gotten credit card charges, fraudulent charges from who he said was Jim Grinsby, that he's at it again. He's using my credit card and all this. So I think it might have been that, but that was a year or two ago.
I mean, we're gonna
So
find out soon.
I know. I would really like to know.
Yeah. So then, okay, now we're officially halfway through the list. Harassment
Hmm.
by false report. That's multiple misdemeanor counts. You got identity theft. That's a felony 4. Okay. Then you
Yeah.
got harassment by communication. I mean that these all seem like, you and I are not like law enforcement people, so they all seem to be talking about the same thing, but these are distinct charges.
Yeah.
Threatening, intimidation, that's a misdemeanor. That one's pretty on the nose. All the messages seem to be pretty threatening.
Right.
Making terrorist threats. That's
That
two.
one.
Yeah, that's 2 felony 3 counts. So that is also a very serious felony. And then, to top it all, false emergency reports, and that's a
Hmm.
felony 6. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
And I don't
That's
know if that's it. They could always tack on more if they find more or through whatever. It's just what we have right now. But it's already more than it for anybody. But if this is going back years, that's what I'm saying. What else are they gonna tack on there? I
so.
don't
Here
know.
are some questions, and obviously, you and I are not qualified to answer these questions, but I'm sure that everybody's thinking it, right? So, if
Hmm.
she doesn't have like Tanya and Rick have guardianship over her, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
can she, I don't know, like what does that do in court? Like, I don't know. It just complicates
Oh,
everything, right?
does
I
it?
don't
Yeah.
know. I have no idea.
I I mean, if she's an adult, though,
She's
I
an
mean,
adult. I don't know. I,
but I can say to the test that, to testify that Shelby doesn't need guardianship. She's fully capable of doing all the things that any independent adult could do themselves. So that might also be thrown into question, where Tanya could now be, coming forward there by police to say, why I don't think this qualifies as she really needs any kind of guardianship, because it seems like she's capable. So that's a good question, though. I thought about that. I'm like, oh, yeah, they have guardianship, or at least Tanya does. So
Wow.
I don't know.
Well, you have officially blown my mind. And obviously,
and that was what I was thinking. Like,
Wow.
Javier is going to love this.
Well, you know what? I don't even know when you messaged me. I don't know if you know what I've been up to lately, but I've been working on this Gypsy Rose Blanchard series.
Yes.
Are you aware of this? Yeah.
Yeah, because I see it on Instagram. I'm like, oh, he's going to cover that. Awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm like knee deep into that, and I haven't been checking my messages because I'm getting bombarded with just a bunch of crap online. And so like your message got lost. I just happened to see it. So
thank God.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's happened just today, so got to tell him.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Javier. Thank you for speaking to me.
All right. Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too. Bye. All right. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but a lot just happened all at once. This is a developing story, and I will continue reporting on it. In fact, I'm going to post some of the documents on Patreon, and you can listen to bonus content on Apple Podcasts, Pretend Plus. So stay tuned there. I want to keep the next few episodes Gypsy-centric because there's a lot to get through. If you want to hear the early Gypsy episodes, they're going to be on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. There's a lot cooking. I even have a LaDonna update, although it pales in comparison to this episode. But it's still interesting and noteworthy. I will be putting the LaDonna update on Patreon and Apple Podcasts as well. So if you want the latest, that's where it's going to be. If anything major happens, you will hear it on this feed first. But for now, let's try to keep the Gypsy train rolling because we're just getting started with that. All right, everyone, take care. Hope to talk to you soon.
Creative Babble.